John, we've got a very special show for everybody tonight. We normally were reserving this Sunday night slot. First of all, how you doing? You're looking a little red going to Mars.
Yeah, it's the lighting. I think I screwed the lighting up or something, so I apologize. I look a little Donald Trumpish.
This is yet another look.
This is not the fake tan or anything. I'm not spraying anything, so don't get too excited.
But yeah, normally
we're doing Web of Deception. Typically Sunday nights. We've done, I don't know, 18 episodes. So, but last week we shared this video documentary that you put together when you came to Thailand to visit me, and it was really well received. The patrons, the people on YouTube, everybody was like, "This is pretty cool," and the patrons, got to watch the whole thing. It's about an hour and 45 minutes long, and so we both thought it would be interesting to sort of break it down and do sort of a director's commentary type of thing, and share with you sort of what was going on with each of us, what was going on in our heads, what was going on in these scenes. So this show tonight's going to be a little bit special. I guess we'll spend about half an hour, 25 minutes together here on YouTube, and then we'll go over to the patron-only area, and Jason and I will be able to share. I think you've got some other footage that you want to share with us as well. So
yeah.
We got some pretty good stuff. So this is kind of a special episode tonight, and excited to do this with you guys. So Jason, what are your thoughts? What do you want to use to kind of set this up for everybody?
Well, it's going to be a really special episode because, for people who have not yet seen this documentary, I really encourage them to become sponsors. They can do that either on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And I've got a couple of things I'd like to do with you tonight, John, on this video, because as I was putting it together, it was just remarkable to me how we got into some pretty involved conversations about what you had discovered about the Las Vegas shooting as we were driving around Thailand, touring around. People who saw the documentary know you took us to your office, you took us to your home, you explained how the home was broken into, the impact that had on your family. And I don't think people, including myself, realized the really bad impact this had on your life. I mean, this disrupted your family, ended a marriage. You haven't really spoken about that before last week. And, a lot of people come out of the woodwork with a lot of nonsense about John Cullen is this, John Cullen is that. It's, they think YouTube is some kind of game, but this is your life, my life. A lot of stuff has happened since this video was made. And there's some things that you said in there that I didn't know about back 5 years ago. And I want to ask you some questions and talk about some things that have happened to both of us since this video, or perhaps that we understand better now that so much time has passed. I thought this was a really unique production from the standpoint of, we shot this 5 years ago, and when we came back, you at first were like, hey, we got to edit this thing and put it out. And I think that was mostly driven by a desire to kind of get into the podcasting business. You and I are both doing this not because we just want money. There's lots of things that we have, skills we could apply to if we were just greedy and unscrupulous and just wanting money. This is about the worst way to make money.
Not yet for me, because when we first got back to the States, I was not yet doing the podcasting. That was later. You convinced me to do it later on, and I'm glad I did. But the reason I wanted to get the footage out was because there was some doubt as to the legitimacy of my work. There was some doubt as to, is this guy really in Thailand? Is this guy a spook? Is he a CIA guy? What the hell's the story here? So I wanted the footage to get out so that people could see, holy mackerel, Jason went to Thailand to see that this is for real and this isn't a joke, and this is not a CIA operation. The guy doesn't have a bodyguard or a driver. It's not that kind of thing.
Right.
And so for me, it was more about that. When we did start the podcasting, So once I started the Patreon and we started doing our weekly podcast, which was not when we first returned. We returned a week ago. We came back a week ago. So it was April 28th, 29th of 2020. We didn't start doing the podcast, I think, until maybe the anniversary of the Vegas shooting, because we did that.
Was it 2020 or 2019? It was 5 years ago.
2019, I'm sorry. So 2019, we returned, but it wasn't until October. And we did a show with Laura Loomer and Joe Napoli.
Right.
Anniversary of the shooting. And I think that may have been the genesis of the new podcast where we were going every week or something like that. When I came back, I wasn't yet doing the podcast. I still thought I might restart my career in America.
IT.
Yeah, like that was going to happen. So,
yeah.
But
you get a hard awakening when you're past 45 and you try to find a job in some technology field. They're like, oh, we would rather hire somebody who's 25.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because, you see, you and I still didn't really know each other that well. And there was this bit of tension when you wanted to release the video and I wasn't ready to release it, primarily because it was just so much material and I wanted to go through it. And you had asked me to send you the footage. And I responded vehemently saying no in a way that I was concerned might upset you. But I mean, it's like releasing the negative.
No. Right. As a photographer, and as a photographer who worked at the Four Seasons,
you got it.
You don't share your raw files. I mean, that's not, you don't do
that. How it goes.
Yeah. So I respected it. I was just eager, right? So again, I'm a little bit retarded. So there's an aspect of me that's very childlike. You
were totally reasonable about it. But I just wanted people to understand that, that
eager
tension
to get it
there.
out. I was excited. I wanted people to see that you came to Thailand.
Yes.
And, here we are, and we're sitting here, and that's where I was talking to Shepard Ambellis. That's where I was talking to Laura Loomer. Right there, right where we were sitting, where the blue ball was hanging from the tree. That's where it was happening, and I wanted the world to know all of this misinformation and nonsense that was coming from this Jake Morphonius character. Now, what I did, so here's the part that I didn't know. So you said we didn't really know each other that well. We spent 5 days together in Thailand, but the part that I didn't know was how much time you spent with Jake. In Vegas. I didn't know any of that stuff. So for me, the Jake Morphonius character, and the reason this is important, everybody, is because this is kind of the reason Jason comes to Thailand, is because Jake Morphonius says he's not really in Thailand. This is a ruse. This is just some social engineering trick, and it's a CIA operation. They're pretending this guy's in Thailand. And they've got some photos of cars in Thailand, and they got some chick in the office that speaks Thai, but he's not really in Thailand.
Right.
And you and I are like, how the hell does he speak Thai? But I didn't know. I thought you only knew Jake from YouTube. I didn't know that you had met him. I didn't know that you went to Maverick Helicopters with the guy, and then he jumps your video and puts out one before you can get back to the hotel. I didn't know any of this stuff. So you had history with the guy that I wasn't aware of until we did this whole, Web of Deception series. And part of the Web of Deception series, we did an episode on Jake Morphonius because it appears there's a bit of a connection here between George Webb.
Exactly. I love what you're saying. I did not prompt you with any of this.
Right. No.
But this is exactly where I wanted to go. I got to reveal something. I tricked you a little bit tonight.
Okay.
Because last week or 2 weeks ago, you said, oh, I think we should end Web of Deception. We've covered it. And I disagreed. I don't think we should end it. And I didn't want to end it. And I told you that. I said, I don't want to do a final episode. Let's just leave it open-ended and we can come back and revisit it. And tonight is not a Web of Deception episode, but it a little bit is. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about because
there's a Web of Deception episode that we did about Jake Morphonius, and in one of those clips in that episode, and that's online. You guys can see that. Jake starts talking about George was it George Webb talking about Jake, or Jake talking about George Webb? Which was it that we put?
It was Jake did an entire video about George. We can look at it again on the sponsored segment because I want people to see that.
So the amount of connection with this Jake Morphonius character was way deeper than I was aware of. So in other words, I came on the show. He was a big deal on YouTube. He had like 250,000 subscribers or 200,000 subscribers at the time. And I had 3,000, something, or 4,000 subscribers. So it was a big deal. And if you can get somebody like that to look at your stuff and go, wow, this is compelling, this is interesting stuff, it can, help people understand what's happening. So I was eager to do it. I didn't realize you guys had been together in Vegas. I didn't know you guys went to Maverick helicopters together because I didn't know any of this stuff. I was a newbie to this whole world of Jake Morphonius's and Matt Couch's and I don't know who the hell these people were. I just, it's like out of nowhere. It's like, well, who is this alternate press group? And that's who, kind of showed up in Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. So I was just kind of naive. I'm just eager to share the evidence. That's it. I'm just eager to share the evidence. We've talked about how at the time I thought it might have been a practice, a warm up for the World Series, meaning the Vegas shooting. It was an outdoor shooting in an outdoor venue, and the World Series was taking place 3 weeks later. Outdoors at Dodger Stadium in 2017. So I was concerned they're going to do this again and 10,000 people are going to die. That was my worry in October, was this was just a warm up to see, can we get away with it? Because I didn't know what the hell was, I didn't know about Frank Muth and Maiteb bin Abdullah, October 8th, October 10th, right? I didn't know all of this detail back then. So there's a fear that's in you and a need to get this information out. And it creates this, this boy who cried wolf type scenario where people are reluctant to believe you because you're so panic stricken as opposed to just being calm. So when I was calm in the video with Jake, when we did this thing and people said, oh, he's definitely a spook. He's calm. He's not getting unsettled. He must be a spook. So I was just listening to him rant and rave about how I wasn't really in Thailand. And ultimately, as our patrons know, he ends up doxing me.
But wait. You just said something very important about the boy who cried wolf, because do you remember in this video that you're talking about what Jake said about you choosing John Cullen as the name?
I remember he spent 10 minutes talking about George Dash and John. He said George Dash was the real hero.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. And
did you know about George Dash?
I mean, I read the story on Wikipedia and I read the story in the New York Times, just like pretty much anybody else did. The reason that site is special to me. So the location where John Cullen faced the Knots. So again, how the hell would he know why I picked John? He doesn't know me. How would he know why I picked the name John Cullen? I almost lost my car on that beach. You don't know this story.
No.
All right. So once upon a time, I had a Land Rover, all-wheel, four-wheel drive Land Rover Discovery. And one night with some friends, I went down to Camp Hero in Amagansett on the beach where John Cullen intercepted the Nazis.
Uh-huh.
And the tide was coming up. And next thing you know, my car is half underwater. And I had to run to the car, get in the car, drive towards the ocean. This is at night, about 11 o'clock at night. And almost lost my Land Rover in the Atlantic Ocean on the beach where John Cullen intercepted the Nazis. So it's kind of a special place for me because I didn't lose my car that night.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I spent
this puts more color on it, and why you're thinking about it and how you know about it.
Yeah, I spent time, this is one of my favorite places. I used to spend a lot of time out in Montauk and Amagansett, and for me to go off-roading, this was one of my favorite places to go off-road. It's called Camp Hero. And
I know about it, but do you know what they were doing at Camp Hero?
all the crazy Tesla stuff with the brain and the stuff with
They
the
were trying to
goat.
make super soldiers.
And they were trying to do the telemetry stuff and
Brainwaves, reading minds.
Yeah.
It's a very top secret thing.
Yeah. What is it? The men who talk to goats?
Exactly. Men who stared at goats.
Yeah, that's them. That's what they were doing in Camp Hero. But there was also a Coast Guard station there. And these guys were, at the Coast Guard station. And the Nazis bring a U-boat within like 100 yards, bring the U-boat to the surface, and they launch a Zodiac, an inflatable, with George Dash and a couple other guys who turns out most of these guys were German American Nazi sympathizers.
Right.
And Cullen confronts them, and he doesn't have a weapon. And George Dash tries to bribe him with $200. $200 is, this was what, 1941?
Might have been a lot of money back then.
Dude, that's like taking $10,000 out of your pocket. Saying
maybe more. How much was a Cadillac in 1941? That's like, here's 50 grand. Go away.
Yes, $200 is a lot of money. And what happens is John Cullen goes to his superiors and says, guys, there were 5 Nazis on the beach. And the superiors say to him, get the hell out of here. How would you know that they're Nazis? Get back to the barracks and shut up.
Why are we not able to find him on Wikipedia anymore?
Who?
John Cullen.
Good question. I guess they don't want you to know. Well, if you go to the Operation Pastorius, John Cullen, it should.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, he should be mentioned in there. If you do a Control F Cullen,
I got it. So Operation Pastorius was a failed German intelligence plan for sabotage inside the United States during World War II. The operation was staged in June of 1942 and was to be directed against strategic American economic targets. The operation was named by Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, chief of the German Abwehr, which I think was their intelligence agency. And it was named for Francis Daniel Pastorius. But this all talks about how the plan quickly failed after 2 of the agents, George John Dash and Ernest Peter Berger, defected to the Federal Bureau of Investigation shortly after being deployed. Now, this guy Dash is who Jake says was the hero of this. But it's interesting because he is a Nazi and he defects to the FBI. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just one thing I invite people to do is whenever you see an article like this, because a lot of people tell us, oh, Wikipedia, why are you reading that? What if you read this with the presumption that everything that they're telling you is false? And sure, some of this information is true. Here are these guys. Dash did become an informant for the FBI. But I'm looking at this all in the context of Operation Paperclip. Who's this? Werner Thiel. What do we know about him?
Yeah, so the net of this is, and the reason I took the name John Cullen, is because when he comes back to the superiors with this fantastic story about Nazis on the beach, they dismiss him. They tell him, get the hell out of here. When was the last time you saw...
Doesn't that seem weird to you that some military people would hear that and just say, we're not even going to look into it? You're crazy, rather than, all right, sounds fantastic, but if it's true, that would be so bad, we better check it out. And weren't the U.S. Armed Forces so concerned about Nazi technology and the reach of the U-boats that they would have to investigate something like that? Doesn't this reek of an operation that the FBI knew about?
So now you get into something interesting, right? So was this allowed to happen? Bingo. He wasn't armed. Why are they not armed at Camp Hero? They've got concrete bunkers at Camp Hero, right, for machine guns, and yet Cullen's on the beach and he's unarmed. So these guys make it all the way to Chicago before they finally say, all right, somebody look into this thing. This Cullen guy won't drop the story. He won't drop it. Somebody look into it. By that time, they're already in Chicago. And I think they were going to do some stuff that, one of the things about counterintelligence is you have to think, if you were a bad guy, what would you do? And that's the stuff you have to shore up, right? And if you look at Chicago and you look at the Great Lake region, you can cripple America if you can cripple the shipping lanes up there.
Seems like they're working on that.
So if you can cripple the shipping lanes, St. Lawrence River, if you can shut that down, which is kind of easy to do, you shut off all the shipping to the Midwest. That's a big deal. And it appears that's what these guys were on their way to do. So I took the name because that location had real personal meaning to me. And, it's kind of a legend in the area. I spent a lot of time in the area. When I was a kid, I used to go out to Amagansett, and we used to swim in the salt marshes with snorkels and laundry baskets. And we would get blue claw crabs. We go with snorkels on in the salt marshes in Amagansett. So the water's like 4, 5, 6 feet deep. And along the banks, we'd have like butterfly nets, and we could catch blue claw crabs, and we'd put them in the laundry baskets. And this is how I spent my teenage years, 12 years old, 13, 14.
It's probably toxic to do that now, but that type of stuff went on Long Island in the 80s, even the early 90s. See, absolutely. And the thing is, you're telling everybody this now, and it's like, this makes a lot more sense. This is the way people arrive at, these internet names. It has meaning to you. Jake immediately presumed that you selected this name because you're in the FBI. And see, I forgot all this stuff about Dash. And obviously I was there on the phone when you said it, but I wasn't thinking about that. And I'm not ready yet, not that I'm keeping it secret, but I just don't want to flood people with so much stuff in one night. But I'm not ready yet to discuss why I've suddenly become much more interested in George Dash than I ever was before. But people know I've been looking at Operation Paperclip, very interested to see Werner Thiel here. There's an Adolf Thiel who is also considered one of the key targets of Operation Paperclip. I don't know what Peter Thiel's family tree looks like, but that's quite interesting. But John, we've just about reached the end here of our intro portion of this show. People are going to be able to watch this extensive commentary on the Thailand documentary and diving into, you zeroed in on the exact topic that I was thinking about. So that's good. That's going to be a super interesting thing. I hope people will join us. If they aren't already sponsoring, please visit subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen or patreon.com/IamJohnCullen to sponsor John and join us for the simulcast. You can also watch on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. That's the largest repository of Crowdsource the Truth legacy content on the internet. And this is content that social engineers are working to delete, to prevent you from seeing. We're going to be looking at some of that on this sponsor-exclusive segment. People can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Stay with us. This is about to get good. We'll be right back.